exciting for me to bring on a good friend, a long friend, Nkechi Taifa, who is president of the Taifa Group LLC, a social enterprise firm whose mission is to advance justice. I could go on and talk about her background, but the most important thing is what she's done most recently, and that is to write this book called Black Power, Black Lawyer. It's a memoir, and I think it's also a toolkit for what those who are in the Black Lives Matter movement need to read to get some sense of direction. Nkechi, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing wonderful, Denise. How are you?
Can't complain. If I could just manage this mute button here, I'd be doing fine. But tell us about the book. I know we don't want to get into all the details, but I know you got a lot in this book that folks need to read. First of all, you're a native Washingtonian, so for those of us who are from DC and know you, you know, from your days of Rabeau Junior High School and some of the other schools you've attended in the DC area, Howard University and others, you know, tell us what we're going to read about in this book.
Well, one of the things I want to say, and I think is very relevant to your show because I was listening to some of your earlier guests, but when we look at all of the struggles that have been on the table, they have been there for decades. The issues that are on the table today, whether we're talking about police misconduct and brutality and murders, whether we're talking about voting suppression, whether we're talking about a Supreme Court ever tilting to the right, whether we're talking about mass incarceration, whether we're talking about the economic wealth gap or health disparities or educational inequities, you know, the list goes on. All of those struggles are struggles that we are facing and confronting with today, and all the more reason why it is such of importance for people to get out there and vote, because having someone there in the White House who would not be inimical to any of these issues will help us continue the struggle in which we are been doing. Today, as yesterday, our right to vote is constantly being under attack. And I hope I'm a lawyer myself, that I hope that my book inspires the legal community and young lawyers and law students to go out there and be part of election protection and you know, doing things to ensure that that the vote in the election is safe and secure and that it is accessible. But it's not just the vote, it's also the Supreme Court. There is so much at stake now. Dealing with the vote, Fannie Lou Hamer, when I found out that Fannie Lou Hamer was arrested and tortured and beaten just for trying to exercise her right to vote, and I'm in elementary school at the time, I'm in like first and second and third grade at the time, I write about that in my book. When we look at the situation with Clarence Thomas, which I write about in my book because I was there working for an organization that was seeking to reveal what his record was and why he would not be an apropos fit for the Supreme Court. We see the same thing carrying itself out today. We see the presumptive nominee, a diehard conservative, in a position to replace a civil rights icon, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just as Clarence Thomas was being in place to replace a civil rights icon, Thurgood Marshall. I tell about these things in my book, and if you look at my book and those struggles from yesterday, and you relate it to exactly what is happening today, I'm hoping that it will serve as a roadmap for activists and advocates who are out there right now today to pick up the baton of the struggle and continue on. You see, my memoir, Denise, it's not just my personal story, which I must say is both serious and sassy and spicy, but it's also a story of movement, the anti-apartheid movement, the cultural nationalist movement, the Black Power movement, the movement to free political prisoners, the reparations movement, the movement against mass incarceration. So all of these things together can help to provide a roadmap to the movements today, the movement for Black lives, the movement just to be able to survive and to breathe.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think about, because we've talked about your book before, we had the pleasure of interviewing you earlier this week, because the book is available at Sankofa Bookstore. I got to give them a shout out. So it's available there at Sankofa. Make sure you go and pick up a copy. But, you know, the interesting thing, too, was, as I mentioned to George Lambert earlier with the Greater Washington Urban League, is the two pandemics, and I added my third, which was the pandemic of ignorance. And the fact that you, I mean, in your early days, you taught at independent Black schools, African-centered schools. And a lot of the children that came out of those schools came out with a strong sense of self. Talk a little bit about, I mean, how we develop sort of that, um, um, uh, I don't know, that fire in the belly that you have right now, where that came from, and how we can nurture that in our young people.
Yes, Denise, thank you so much for asking, because part of that is a sense of self, a sense of pride in your culture and your heritage. But in order to have that sense, you got to know about it. I learned about it on my own. I tell them in my book, Black Power, Black Lawyer. I learned about it on my own. Students should not have to learn about it on their own. It should be a part of the regular curriculum. That's what I tried to do when I was teaching at an independent Black school, Nation House Watoto School, at the time, to serve to imbue and instill in our youth a sense of pride and culture, identity, purpose, and direction. I think today, if our youth have that same identity, purpose, and direction, there would be no question, okay, that they would do whatever is necessary to make sure that this country does not fall down the slippery slope to fascism, which it appears as if it's doing, to get out there and exercise that right to vote that our ancestors, sacrificed and died for, and continue to move the struggle to a more heightened level.
Of course, I want folks to go and get this book, but I want folks to realize that this is not your first, and that you've graced our community with two children's books as well. And so, just remember that name, Nkechi Taifa, that title as an author, and also all the other things that you're doing. You semi-retired, but you're not. So
I'm just quickly.
Yeah. So what's with you today? What are you working on right now?
Okay, yeah. So I am the principal of the Taifa Group LLC, which is a consulting firm whose mission is to advance justice. I convene the Justice Roundtable, which is a coalition of over 100 organizations working on federal criminal justice policy issues. And I'm trying to get my book out there so that the next generation can learn from the mistakes that we made and can triumph in our victories.
Nkechi, thank you so much for being with us today. I still haven't picked up my copy yet, so I'm gonna try to get up there this weekend. But I wish you much success with that. And
your name is in the book, Denise. Yeah,
yeah, I heard. And we'll get a review done. Hopefully, folks can read that in the Washington Informer real soon. And I wish you so much success, and keep fighting, my sister. Keep fighting.
Thank you so much, my sister. Peace.
All righty. Likewise. So.
Where do you come to get all you know?